Well, you can go to church anywhere in America and practically any denomination, and regardless of its size or its location or its creed, I promise you that you will find people in that congregation, many with bitter hearts. I would dare say today that there are some in our service that are bitter over things that have happened to you in times past. We've all been bitter at some time or another of things that we are dealing with as far as forgiving someone for something that has been done to us. Just as airports have metal detectors, I wish churches could have bitterness detectors. It might help. I heard about one guy that was speaking to a friend during lunch break, and he said, every time my wife and I get in an argument, she gets hysterical on me. And the guy says, you mean hysterical? He said, no, I mean historical. She brings up everything I've done wrong in the past in our marriage. So bitterness should have no place really in God's people, among God's people, but it does. And the Apostle Peter came in this Matthew chapter 18 and to the Lord Jesus on occasion and asked him a question about this matter of forgiveness. Look there in verse 21 with me. Then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times. Now, that's a good question, and this is the reason why that it's a good question. Nobody makes it through this life without hurt or personal injury. Did you hear me? Nobody makes it through. The question is not whether people are going to hurt you, or the question is not whether people are going to do you wrong. The question is, how are you going to respond? Because we know that people are going to hurt us. They have hurt us. But how are we going to respond? Forgiving somebody, humanly speaking today, is not an easy thing to do. Am I telling the truth? It's not an easy thing to do. The very word forgiveness tells us how difficult forgiveness is, because the word literally means to let it go. That's what it means. When you forgive, honestly forgive, it means to let it go. Forgiveness, as you can see on our next frame here, is when you choose to release to the Lord any bitterness that you have towards someone and let God handle that matter in his own way. That's what we're to do. Someone made the great statement, forgiveness is giving up my right to hurt you for hurting me. And I thought that was a pretty good statement. Now, when Peter asked this question of Jesus in a blunt way, his question really was this. If you want to put it in modern day and common terms here, Peter is saying, how many times do I have to forgive my brother who sins against me before I beat the daylights out of him? That's basically what Peter's saying here. That's more in modern day terms. And now he pulls a trick here because he makes a suggestion to Jesus, as if Jesus doesn't know, as if Jesus doesn't have the answer, that he can suggest to him what it might be like. So he makes a suggestion to Jesus. How about 7 times? How about, if we're going to forgive someone, how about 7 times? Now, the reason why that Peter used the phrase 7 times is the Jewish law stipulated that a wounded person was obligated to forgive someone 3 times in the Jewish law. And so Peter doubles that number of the law that it demands, and he added just one more for bonus, 7 times. He comes up with a number 7. He thinks he was going to give Jesus some real big white special of saying 7 instead of 3. But here it is, Peter, he has one big concern, and that is he's not worried about forgiving somebody too little. He's worried about forgiving somebody too much. And as usual, the Lord Jesus gave an answer that's not only surprising, but it is stunning of what Jesus had to say. Look with me there in verse 22. And I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 7 times 7. Now I understand that when Jesus said 7 times 7 here, he was not giving some math lesson here. He wasn't saying keep a chart and when you get to 490 and then go over to 491, then you can take somebody out. That's not what Jesus is saying here. Peter wanted to say 7 strikes and then you're out. I have a right to take you out after 7 times. You know, that's what Peter's looking for. But Jesus was not even saying after 490 times you can take someone out. That's not what he is saying. Peter thought if someone sinned against you and he repented and you forgave him and then he did exactly the same thing again and he repented and you forgave him again, then you can say, that's number 2. See, that's what Peter is thinking in that vein. But here is what Jesus said. I want you to see it very strong on our next slide here, that Jesus is saying you can't keep a scorecard. That's what Jesus is saying. If someone sins against you the first time, then you forgive the brother, and then you promise never, ever to hold it against them again. That's what Jesus is saying. So it's very obvious that Jesus has to not only teach Peter, but he has to teach us exactly what God expects of us concerning this matter of forgiving those who hurt us. Now, to illustrate this truth about forgiveness, Jesus tells us a parable and gives us several truths here that I think that is very important for us to see today. First of all, let's look at when we thankfully receive forgiveness. When we thankfully receive forgiveness. Jesus' parable teaches us the importance of thanksgiving. Several points about this. First of all, forgiveness is free, but it's not cheap. Look with me in verse 23. Therefore, if the kingdom of heaven likened unto a certain king which would take account of his servants, and when he had begun to reckon, one was brought unto him which owed him 10,000 talents. But for as much as he had not to pay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, and his wife and children, and all that he had in payment to be made. Now Jesus tells about a man here who has embezzled a great amount of money. We're talking about an amount of 10,000 talents. This man, in reality, to help you see, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but he would have to work 500 years in order to pay the debt that he had, not counting interest. 500 years. In today's currency, some have calculated it would be something like $10 million. Can you imagine that? How'd you like to have to pay $10 million back? You know, this man couldn't do it either. Now the point is this, and that is it's an unpayable debt. That's the point. This is an impossible situation. There is no way this man, absolutely no way that he could ever pay back what he has stolen. Now, in order to understand the parable, you've got to realize here, as bring it up, guys, the debt in this parable represents sin. That's important to understand that. Sin is an unpayable debt. And my friend, I'm here to tell you that no matter how hard you work, or how good you try to be, or how often you attend church on your own, you can never, ever pay the sin debt that you owe to God. There's no way that any of us can pay that debt. In fact, if you look at the very best human being that has ever lived and took that best, and you turn that into gold, there would never, ever be enough gold to make a down payment on the debt of just one person. There never would be. And that is why I want you to understand that forgiveness is free, but it is not cheap. Because, as we're going to see later on, it cost the king a great deal to forgive this debt. Then look, second of all, forgiveness is full, and it is not partial. Verse 26. And the servant therefore fell down and worshipped him, saying, Lord, have patience with me, and I will pay thee all. Then the Lord of that servant was moved with compassion, loosed him, and forgave him the debt. Now, this is what the king did. He took what this man had stolen, and he allowed it just to be a debt, and then he turned that debt into a loan. And that in itself, my friend, would not take care of this man because he didn't even have enough money, even if it was a loan, in order to be able to pay it off. So the king went further than that, and that is that he not only converted the theft into a loan, but then he forgave the loan, which is astounding. It's an astounding story. The debtor owed a debt he could not pay, and the king paid a debt he did not owe. And friend, may I just say, without passing over it too lightly, that is exactly what our precious Savior, Jesus Christ, did for us on the cross of Calvary. Is that not true? My friend, we owed a sin debt that we could not pay, and our precious Savior, Jesus Christ, paid our sin debt that he did not owe. Well, what a wonderful Savior, amen? Thank God for that. Then I want you to see also forgiveness must be final and not temporary. Verse 27, and the Lord of that servant was moved with compassion and loosed him and forgave him the debt. Now what just happened here? Well, the slate was clean, the debt is canceled, the prisoner was released, nothing was left hanging over anyone's head, and the books are closed. Not only is the debt forgiven, but I'm glad to tell you that it is also forgotten. Both. That is very important for you to understand today, that we have a master. You and I have a master, and we know that his name is Jesus. He's our master, and he has forgiven us an insurmountable debt. Now, does he demand reimbursement? Does our Savior demand reimbursement? Before he forgives, does he insist on a pound of flesh? I ask you the question, though, when your feet walk the wrong road, does he demand for you to cut your feet off? I ask you, when your eyes look twice where they should have never looked once, does he blind you? I ask you, when you use your tongue for profanity instead of praise to our God, does he cut it out? Is that our Savior? If he did, we'd sure live in a maimed world, would we not? We certainly would. But he never demands any payment. Why? Look at it here. Because what God forgives, thank God, God forgets. Aren't you thankful for that today? We'd all be in trouble if that were not true. My friend, we can be so thankful today that we can receive his forgiveness. As far as the east is from the west, he has removed our transgressions from us, as the psalmist tells us. Then we move on to our second thought today, when we humbly render forgiveness. The story makes a real shift here. Look at it. Forgiveness experienced should become forgiveness expressed. We begin reading there in verse 28. The same servant went out and found one of his fellow servants, which owed him 100 pence, and he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, "Pay me that thou owest." And his fellow servant fell down at his feet and besought him, saying, "Have patience with me, and I will pay thee all." And he would not, but went and cast him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants saw what was done, they were very sorry, and came and told unto their Lord all that was done. Then his Lord, after he had called him, said unto him, "O thou wicked servant, I forgave thee all that debt, because thou desirest me. Shouldest not thou also have compassion on thy fellow servant, even as I had pity on thee?" Now the story turns here in an incredible way. This man, who had just been released from his own debt, comes upon one of his own debtors. Rather than reciprocating with forgiveness, we find that the Bible tells us that he ruthlessly demands payment from this man. You're going to pay me. In fact, he wasn't really looking for payment. In reality, he's looking for punishment. That's what he wants. He wants this man to be punished. He only owed him 100 denarii, which is about 100 days' wages. Nothing compared to other men. I would tell you, in today's number, that is the figure of about $15 is what he owed to be paid. And to put it mildly, this man only owed a bare fraction of what the other man owed the king. You see what's taking place here in this story? What is even more bizarre, he demands that his debtor to be put in jail until the debt can be repaid. And you look at that. That's not only being ungrateful, but it's being unreasonable. It's crazy here. How can you expect him to earn money in prison? What does he expect him to do? Sell magazines to the prisoners in order to be able to pay them off? It's just not unreasonable of what is taking place here. And so the decision makes no sense with the whole thing. You say, that's crazy. Well, that's just the whole point. It is nuts. The whole thing is nuts. Look at our next statement here. Bitterness and refusal to forgive never makes any sense. That's the whole point. It's crazy. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, to put it in perspective today, the man who owed the equivalent of $10 million was not willing to forgive the man that owed $15. It's an astounding story here. Now, here's the point. Our next statement here. When you compare our sin debt to God to someone else's sin debt to us, it's like comparing a mountain to a molehill. You see what I'm saying? You see where we're going with this parable, or what the parable teaches us? That God has forgiven us so great. How is it that we cannot forgive the small things in this life? You say, well, it's not small to me. Well, it's small comparison compared to what Jesus forgave you of. That's true. That's the point that's being made here. The old evangelist, Methodist evangelist by the name of Sam Jones once said, I don't have anything in this world to forgive. I will never stay mad with any man unless he treats me worse than I have treated Jesus Christ. Has any man treated you worse than what we treated Jesus Christ? Absolutely not. There's no one. So forgiveness experience should become forgiveness expressed. Then we find, second of all, forgiveness earlier should become forgiveness endlessly. We all need to learn this valuable lesson. Forgiveness had better not just be a past event in your life. It better be a present experience in your daily living. If you've been set free, don't live as if you're still living in prison. And I would tell you there are a lot of people that are living in prison today. You see somebody else sins against you and you have to forgive them. God is reminding you too that you had to be forgiven. We all had to be forgiven, lest we hold ourselves up in too high of esteem. That is the reason why the Bible tells us in Ephesians 4:32, be ye kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Why should I forgive them? Because Christ forgave you. That's the reason why that you should. Well, I have no reason. They've not asked me to forgive them. You forgive them because Christ forgave you. That's the reason why. We'll learn in just a moment that the key to forgiving others is, look at our next phrase here, quit focusing on what they have done to you and start focusing on what God has done for you. God's done something great for you. Quit focusing on them. Focus on the Lord. So that is why we must humbly render forgiveness. Then last of all, when we regretfully refuse forgiveness. I heard about a mother that ran into a bedroom when she heard her 7-year-old son scream, and she found his 2-year-old sister pulling his hair. And she gently released the little girl's grip and very calmly and comfortably said to the little boy, said, there, she didn't mean it. She doesn't know that hurts. And he nodded in acknowledgement, and the mom went on her way. And when she got down the end of the hall, she heard the little girl screaming. And she came back and she said, what happened? And the little boy said, she knows now. Well, the parable closes out letting us know that there are consequences for those who do not forgive. And this is where I want to close out the message. The last point is a point of stern warning. Look at it. The mark of an unforgiving spirit in verse 34. And his Lord was wroth and delivered him to the tormentors till he should pay all that was due unto him. So the king hears about this, the helplessness of this man, and he immediately has him thrown back into prison, and this man is back in debt. You know why the parable turns this way? Unforgiving servants always end up in prison. Do you hear what I say? Unforgiving servants always end up in prison. Look at it. Bitter people live in a prison of anger, guilt, and depression. That's what they are, bitter people. They live in that prison. They don't get out of that prison as long as they're bitter. They never get out of that prison. The only difference is God doesn't have to put us in a jail. God doesn't do that. You know why? Because we put ourselves in that jail. We put ourselves in our own prison with our own bitterness. We're the ones that place us there. We're the ones that put ourselves there. The Bible says in the book of Job, one person dies in his full health, completely secure and at ease, yet another person dies with a bitter soul. What are you going to be? Are you going to be that one that dies talking about feeling good about life and healthy spiritually speaking? Or are you going to be the one that dies bitter because of the things that have happened to you? Don't miss the fact that though this man was thrown back into prison, that it was his own fault. It was his own fault. And I hate to say, but I think that many of us are in a prison that we have built with our own bitterness. We're there. You may be here today, and I dare say that many of us from time to time have been in that prison. I hope and pray you're not there today, but you might be. You might be in that prison today. Our churches are full of people that are in that prison because of bitterness. And if we are not careful, we can forget the forgiveness that we have received and refuse to forgive the hurt that other people have done to us. The end results for this, we find, will come about that we will endure stress and hardship and a troubled conscience, bitter spirits, poor health, until we come to this point of dealing with forgiving others. This is what we're relegated to. This is the prison that we face. A number of years ago, our church was a sponsoring church for a new church that began in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's a thriving church today. They run 300 to 500. Our missionary David Homer, which is now in Taiwan, started that church. We used him. And on many occasions, my wife and I had the opportunity to go out there and speak in that work of organizational meeting and some of the beginning services. And in some of the beginning services, they had quite a few wealthy Chinese businessmen that were in that church. And one of the homes that we met in when the church first began was a home on that San Francisco Bay on the hill overlooking that bay. It was phenomenal place to be. We walk in that home, they would, and of course in the Chinese tradition, we would take our shoes off and come in and we had service there. It was a strange feeling preaching with no shoes on. I promise you, it was strange. You know, you wouldn't think so, but it's kind of strange. Like, I need my shoes on to preach. It was a strange feeling. But I will tell you, in that same area was Alcatraz. And many of you know what Alcatraz is, one of the most escape-proof prisons in the world of the past, 1933 to 1963. It served as a federal prison, and during that time, 26 prisoners tried to escape, but only 3 got out, and they don't ever know what happened to them. They don't know whether the sharks got them or whether they truly escaped. They don't know. Surrounded by this shark-infested waters, the San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz boasted of its high walls, of its double-locked doors, its machine guns in the hands of guards and staff that they said that could not be bribed. And it was known throughout the prison world, and even to this very day, as the system of the big house. You hear that talked about. It was Alcatraz. But I want to tell you, the world's worst prison is not Alcatraz or some of the others like Devil's Island that you have heard about. It is not that. Look at it. The worst prison is the one created by our own bitter spirit. That's the worst prison. It is the dungeon of the bitter heart. That is why the book of James says, for judgment is without mercy to one who has shown no mercy. Did you hear that? For judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. That's what James tells us. Gives us some good instruction there. But I want to move on as we close out here. The mark of an unforgivable spirit. Not only an unforgiving, but an unforgivable spirit. Verse 35, so likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you, if ye from your hearts forgive not everyone his brother their trespasses. Now, you may be theologically straight, you may be morally upright, but if you do not have a forgiving spirit, my friend, I'm here to tell you today, you are spiritually bankrupt. That's where you are. You have that bitterness in your heart. Thomas Fuller once said, he that cannot forgive others burns the bridge over which he must pass himself, for every man has the need to be forgiven. A lot of you remember the names of John Ehrlichman and Charles Colson. It's hard to believe that there's a large segment of people that are sitting here today that don't even realize what happened with these men. If I were to have raised hand, a lot of you wouldn't even know who they were. But a lot of us do. They were villains, so to speak, involved in the Watergate scandal that ultimately led to President Richard Nixon's resigning from office as president, a humiliating resignation. Both men spent time for their roles that they played in this Watergate scandal. Colson became a Christian through this experience. Many of you have read. I've got a lot of Charles Colson's books in my office and read many of them, and you have too. Became a Christian. But Ehrlichman, a Christian scientist, seethed in anger, and he was bathed in bitterness. For over 20 years, he openly despised Colson as a Christian, and he wrote many defamatory articles against him. All throughout, people would read these articles against Colson that Ehrlichman had written. Less than a year before John Ehrlichman died in 1999, Colson learned of his failing health. And this former domestic affairs advisor, whose office was immediately above the Oval Office, and he had immediate access to the president at any time that he wanted, now he's alone in a nursing home. This is where he is. One day into the room here, and I want to tell you that he's there because he's dying of renal failure. His third wife has left him. His children will have nothing to do with him. One day, Charles Colson walks into the room there in his nursing home. He not only hugged John Ehrlichman, but he told him that he loved him. And then he went on to share with him the awesome power of the saving power of Jesus Christ and how Jesus loved him and died for him. Ehrlichman was shocked at the concern and forgiveness offered him by a man that he had vehemently attacked for 20 years, written all kind of ugly things about him. That 1 hour meeting led to Ehrlichman begin his journey towards God, and 3 months later he called Colson and asked Colson to come because he said the doctor told him that he didn't have long to live. Colson was sick himself and could not come, but he sent someone there, and thank God. John Ehrlichman asked Jesus to be his Lord and Savior. He accepted the Lord. John Ehrlichman of Watergate fame entered into the presence of God because one Christian decided to extend the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. I mean, he had defamed him all across America, but yet Charles Colson loved him in the Lord, regardless of it. My friend, I'm well aware of the fact that forgiving doesn't come easy when we have been hurt and we have been wronged. I don't know how many times I have heard people say, but you don't know how bad he hurt me. But my friend, it doesn't make any difference. Remember, we hurt Jesus more. Our natural instinct is to recoil in self-protection. That's our natural instinct to do that. We don't naturally overflow with mercy and grace and understanding when we have been wrong. We don't naturally do that. Forgiving doesn't come easy. However, notice with me here what it says. Bring it up there, guys. Forgiveness is a choice we make through a decision of our will, motivated by obedience to God and his command to forgive. What does the Bible say? Colossians 3:13, forbearing one another and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. Christ forgave you, so you're obligated to forgive. You must forgive. Everything that we do and say ought to be centered on our great example, which is Jesus Christ. Is he not our great example? Well, then we need to do as he has done. And God honors our commitment to obey him and our desire to please him when we choose to forgive. Jesus tells us in Mark 11:25, and when ye stand praying, forgive, if ye have aught against any, that your Father also which is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses. Jesus says in the book of Luke, he says, judge not, and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not, that ye shall not be condemned. Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. Do you really want to be used of God? How about it, Christians today? Do you really want to be used of God? Do you really want to be free from the spirit, from anger and bitterness and resentment and hurt that will imprison us, or that is imprisoning you today? Do you want to be free from that? Then you want me to tell you what you need to do? You need to love God, love others, and make a difference. You will make a difference. When you love God, when you love others, you will make a difference. You'll make a difference in this world. Is that not what Chuck Colson did? Did he not love God? Did he not love others even when they spit upon him and wrote all kind of evil things upon him? But yet he loved others. Did he make a difference? John Oderman's not in hell today. He's in heaven because of a man, a Christian man, that chose to love rather than hate. When we learn to forgive, we do make a difference, and God can use us. The Bible says, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ.